So there's two or three versions of this story. I will tell you one. It may not have happened just like this, but I feel very confident that the story itself is true. It was first written about by the Roman historian Theodoret in the 5th century. And the story itself happened in the start of the 5th century or the last part of the 4th century. You can also see this story in Fox's Book of Martyrs, which some of you may have read or may have heard of. It was written in the 16th century. It is the story of the last man who died in the Roman Colosseum. It is the story of a man by the name of Telemachus, who originally lived in the Eastern Roman Empire. The Roman Empire at this time had been divided up. And he moved to a town in the Western Empire, 15 or 20 miles from Rome. This man was a monk. He was an ascetic, which means he did not really have an earthly family except for the church. He was unmarried, no children. He spent most of his time studying and praying. You also need to keep in mind that this was a time when Christianity was the religion of Rome. If you know anything about history, for about 300 years it was illegal to be a Christian in the Roman Empire. Then in 313 AD, Constantine, with the Edict of Milan, made Christianity a legal religion. In 380, it became the official religion of the Roman Empire. Telemachus lived in the late 300s. But the story is told as he was praying that God told him to go to the Colosseum to see the fights. Even though Christianity was the official religion of Rome, you have to realize there were still many pagan customs and traditions that they kept up. And one of them was the gladiatorial fights in the Colosseum, where people fought to the death. And Telemachus had this vision from God, or dream from God, if you will, that he was supposed to see this. And he could not understand it. But finally, he went to Rome. He went to the games in the Colosseum. And he watched as people would come out, the combatants, and they would literally fight to the death. And he was horrified by it. And after 30 minutes to an hour, he could not take it anymore. And the story says that he stood up from the bleachers, that he cried, "Stop this, stop this," that he ran down, actually jumped into the arena. He went up to the gladiators and tried to push them apart, saying, "Stop, stop!" And the gladiators were dumbfounded. They didn't know what to do. This had never happened before. And the people in the stands were on their feet, and they started to shout, "Kill him! Kill him!" And the gladiators, looking at one another, they took up their swords and literally hacked Telemachus to death. It seemed at that time that there was almost a fog that had been lifted on all of these people. That not only the gladiators, but the people in the stadium saw for the first time what they had become. They saw for the first time what they actually were doing. And the story is said that starting with the gladiators who dropped their swords and walked toward their exits, that the people in the stands bowed their head in shame and filed silently out of the Colosseum. Some stories say that happened in 391 AD. Some say 404 AD, but this is certainly unquestionable, and that is on January 1, 404, the Emperor of Rome, Honorius, signed a proclamation to end the gladiatorial fights in the Colosseum of Rome. After that date, they never fought again. And it is attributed to what this one monk did when he came and gave his life to show people what they had actually become. I'd like to end with this. Whether you are the Queen of Persia or a monk in Italy or maybe a farmer in Alabama, understand, even if you cannot see it, even if you cannot feel it, understand that the providence of God is working in this world.